Hello.
Hello.
Welcome inside Fever Insider Live. Brian Haenchen, Peterson here with you. Apologize for the delay. I was over at Wing Shoot Around and now in the bowels of Cambridge Fieldhouse. Brian Haenchen, Peterson here with you for about 50 minutes or so, fielding your questions, talking about stuff, specifically the Fever's upcoming game tonight with the Dallas Wings, the signing yesterday of Odyssey Sims, Grace Berger for the AU fans out there, getting the rest of the season deal with the Wings. There's a lot to get to. Chloe, let's just start, I think, with the biggest news of the week, and that's the addition of Odyssey Sims yesterday to a rest of season contract.
Yeah, I mean, the Fever signed Odyssey Sims to a regular hardship contract, which is different than an emergency hardship contract. And it basically means that, barring she can be on for the rest of the season if she wants, or if the Fever want her to be, because the technicalities of that are, so to have a regular hardship contract, which is different than the emergency hardship contract, which automatically triggers when you're under 10 available players. So the Fever were eligible for an emergency hardship contract as well, but they opted for the regular hardship contract, which is something they had to apply for with the league. And they were obviously granted it because they have 3 players who 2 are out for the season. One's obviously been out for going on a month now. So they were technically even eligible for 2 hardship contracts, but as of right now, they have only signed Odyssey Sims to one of them. And basically, if they don't sign anybody else to a hardship contract, then Odyssey Sims will be able to stay on the team on a hardship contract when Caitlyn Clark comes back, because they'll still be eligible for 1 hardship contract when Caitlyn comes back, because they'll have, obviously, Sydney Colson, Erin McDonald out for the rest of the season. If they decide to sign a second player to a hardship contract, they'll have to release either that second hardship player or Odyssey Sims when Caitlyn Clark comes back. But it seems as of right now they're trending toward just signing Odyssey Sims, but who knows?
As a reminder, you guys can get involved with the show via the comment section. We'll do like we did last time. We did one of these shows, and we'll have address everybody's questions, do a little Q&A over the last 10, 15 minutes of the show. Chloe, we have some sound that you gathered yesterday from practice. Let's go ahead and let's start with Odyssey Sims on joining the Fever, specifically when she found out that the Fever were interested.
Say when I found out, but I didn't know I was flying here on Sunday. Just excited. I know that Indiana is a great organization, and just to be a part of it and just to be here with the great players that I'm going to be playing with, this is a great opportunity. I'm just happy to be here. Just fine. I think when you go to any team, go from one team to the next, of course it's about adjusting, fitting in, of course learning the plays. But, I think I learned pretty quick. I know this team does get out and run a lot. That's what I do like to do. So I think I'll just be just fine starting tomorrow.
Again, that's the newest Fever acquisition, Odyssey Sims, on her fit with the team when she found out about the news. And, yeah, fit-wise, it seems pretty obvious. You think she's going to start tonight at the point guard position, or will they ease her in off the bench?
I wouldn't be surprised if she started. She mentioned I wasn't sure if it was, saying starting tomorrow she'll be ready, if she meant as, beginning tomorrow or that she'll start tomorrow. I didn't clarify that, but I think she's going to have a pretty big role pretty quickly. I wouldn't be surprised either way if she starts or comes off the bench tonight, but probably starting Friday. I could see her starting for the Fever, at least until obviously Caitlyn Clark comes back. But, she kind of fills exactly what they need, obviously, coming into with this hardship, because, they don't want Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham to have to play out of position for entire games. Like, obviously, they're going to have to help out on point guard still right now, because it's only Odyssey Sims as a point guard right now. So they're going to have to be that backup point guard. But they obviously don't want either of them to have to do that for an entire game, even though Kelsey Mitchell was pretty impressive at point guard or at emergency point guard on Saturday. But I think they're going to give Odyssey Sims a pretty big role pretty quickly. And that's still also something she has prepared for. She's been in the league for 12 years. She's kind of done this dance before and coming into a team midseason and just coming on with, 1 or 2 practices. She joined Dallas midseason on a hardship contract. Similar situation as to the Fever last year, and she started multiple games with Dallas. And then after she was released from that hardship contract with Dallas last year, she joined the Los Angeles Sparks midseason, kind of did the same thing. And then, this season she started with. Sorry.
Come on, Chloe, focus. We got 45 minutes.
Here's Davey. There he is. He's going to go on the ground. Anyway.
Explain the hardship waivers.
Anyway, she started the season with Los Angeles this year. She started 11 games, so she has that starting experience, and she obviously knows how to run an offense. And I think, that's going to be perfect for the Fever, especially missing all 3 of their point guards.
To that end, we have Stephanie White talking about the addition of Odyssey Sims. And I think in this clip that we clipped off, I think she discussed a little bit of how that fits, how it works with Kelsey Mitchell, and then also Odyssey Sims on how to learn the Fever system here in such a short period of time.
See in the 2-man game. She's been really good in the 2-man her whole career. Her ability to get downhill and to make plays for herself and others, to knock down shots, her speed and quickness with the ball in her hands, all things that we need, and she'll be a great addition.
You feel better at implementing players mid-season with how many times you guys have had to work through it?
Yeah, it is what it is at this point, and particularly when you're talking about a point guard, really making sure that we focus in on the high-level usage things that we'll use when she's on the floor, and getting her up to speed on not just what we do offensively, but what we do defensively. I feel pretty good about that. Our group is really good about how we help one another out and how they help one another out on the floor. So she's ready to go.
Try not to overload me with too many plays. I've learned today just the basic ones that they've been running. And we have just played where they put all their plays, so I'll be reviewing a lot today. But it's no pressure. Of course, like brain farts are expected. I might call a play, it might be the wrong because I'm thinking of a different play. It's happened to me before, so I'm just going in with no pressure. Like I said, just gonna play, help them from the point guard position, and just be me out there.
I have my mic muted. That was a junior move right there. Odyssey Sims, Stephanie White right there on Odyssey Sims, how she's going to fit in with this group, how she's been adjusting to the playbook, learning it, admitted that there may be a couple bumps in the road, some growing pains, understandably, for somebody in her position. But like Chloe said, a veteran player who's been through this a few times understands the dance, and I'm sure, is acclimated and well adjusted to learning the stuff on the fly and being ready for a game on a moment's notice.
Yeah, I think obviously, as she mentioned, it's going to be a simplified playbook tonight for them. And obviously, they can change it up depending on when Odyssey Sims is running point, and then, when they put in Sophie or Kelsey to run point as well, that's when they can run maybe those different plays that Odyssey isn't as, used to yet. But I think it's going to be a more simplified game, and it works out because they're playing the Wings, who are currently not in the playoff picture and not that great of a team this year, a rebuilding team this year. So it's a good time to have to integrate Sims into the offense and just the Fever lineup as a whole.
Speaking of those Wings, they come in on a 5-game losing streak, coming off a 91-78 loss to the Mystics on Sunday. Like Chloe said, it's an opportunity for the Fever to continue staying right. Like we mentioned after the last game, it's a tough spot that the Fever in with these injuries, but it's the perfect stretch of the schedule for something like this to happen, like this. Any other thoughts, Chloe, or any general observations on the Dallas game tonight? Like, I'm kind of curious defensively how the Fever approach it. Will they go back to the zone like they did with Chicago the other night? I'm kind of fascinated. Did Stephanie White talk at all about that yesterday, or mention anything about the defensive approach?
Not necessarily, other than obviously bringing Odyssey into the fold defensively as well. But I guess I can ask you if Paige Beckers was participating in their shoot-around this morning.
She was. It looked like she was out there. She was shooting around, participating. They were running through some stuff. So I would lean towards her probably playing tonight. So we'll see. Obviously, the big story here locally has been Grace Berger, the IU alum, signing a rest of season contract at the Wings. She was set to expire here within either later today or tomorrow. So it's good to see her landing with them after 3 stints with them, some time in Minneapolis and then some time as well out in Los Angeles. So segue out there beautifully. Anything else, Chloe, pertaining to the game or recently that you wanted to touch to before we talk about, I don't know, Caitlyn Clark and some of these games upcoming for the Fever?
I don't think so. I think I'm good.
Where do you want to go? Games upcoming, or should we just dive into the Caitlyn Clark thing?
We just dive into Caitlyn Clark.
Okay, let's start that off, and then we'll play it here with Stephanie White giving an update yesterday, and then we'll let Chloe dissect.
And starting full court running last week, has she been able to do anything extra since then or return to practice at all?
No return to practice. She's been able to get a little bit more in her full court running, with her all of her body weight. It's really building up from doing minimal to then building some endurance to do longer periods of time. She's been able to do a little bit more on the court in terms of how she moves, but not into practice yet, no.
After all.
So there you go, some progress. Nothing major. I mean, it's better than nothing, I guess, for some fans. Obviously not others because they're in your mentions. Upset that we aren't #holding Stephanie White accountable for not making it heal faster, I guess, or asking questions like, is she out for the season? Which is a thing that I think if that was the case, they would have said earlier on. But like you replied, these muscle injuries are difficult to gauge. They're different for everybody. And I mean, there's not much else to say, but some progress. I feel like that development yesterday is at least a positive step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's about the update I expected from Steph White in terms of Caitlyn Clark's health. I mean, obviously there was that ESPN automated service, I think through RotoWire, that put her estimated return date as August 12th, which I don't know where they got that date from, but they put her estimated return date as August 12th, and then I think it automatically updated her status from out to a game time decision for tonight's game, which was not based on any reporting or anything the team had put out, but that obviously caused a bit of a frenzy around fans and around everything. But, she hadn't even returned to practice, and that's something that is automated, never really was, something based on reporting with that return date, which I think had been on ESPN service since she was out on July 16th.
Right, actually. Yeah.
So it still said when I checked last night, they changed her status for tonight's game to out, but still said her estimated return date was August 12th. But yeah, so that was not really based on anything. And obviously, as of last week, when I talked to Stephanie White about Caitlyn's status and she hadn't returned to practice, the Fever haven't really had an official practice since, I think, before they left on the West Coast road trip, because most of their practices, quote unquote, were walkthroughs and just low impact things that weren't officially, considered a practice for them. And so she hasn't really even had an opportunity between, Seattle and now to practice until yesterday. And I think, obviously, as I've mentioned before, they're being very cautious with this injury because this is her fourth muscle injury of the season. And obviously the first one was kind of just a little tweak, a little tightness, she said, in the preseason. But that quad strain and that left groin strain were both, 2-week injuries, I would say. And then, she came back from those injuries, and then whether it was overcompensation on, a different muscle in her body or kind of how that worked, she got injured again. So I think they're being very cautious in making sure she doesn't overcompensate on other muscles, to make sure she will not, injure something else once she returns for, the third, fourth time, whenever that is in a few weeks, or we don't really have a timeline, as they've said.
I think you have a timeline and you're just hiding it from us.
Yeah.
You specifically have the timeline.
Me specifically.
Yes, please, everybody tweet that at Chloe throughout tonight's game as we'll be sitting together. That always makes me laugh when the stupids get into her mentions. I just enjoyed this quote from Sam that Steph White has these answers down pat, but I will say, bless her, because she does find ways to make it just different enough that it's not just literally copy and paste every game. Like I think when they're in the commissioner's thing in Minneapolis, I think I had to ask her 3 different times because there were 3 different updates over the course of the day between shoot around, right before the game, then I think maybe after or something like that. Anyway, she managed to update it just a little bit each time and give you something different. But yeah, it's got to be tiring, and it's difficult when there isn't an update really to give. But people want to know, which is understandable.
Yeah, I would imagine. I know kind of White has mentioned that she wants Caitlyn to have but a good amount of practice time before she returns to the court, because that's kind of another one of the things that maybe could have contributed to these separate injuries that, she kind of came back. She felt ready to come back, but she didn't have that 5-on-5 practice time, with the team. And, obviously there's nothing that can compensate for 5-on-5 practice.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that could have maybe contributed to, these injuries kind of recurring, popping up. So Steph White has mentioned that she wants Caitlyn to have a good amount of practice time before she returns. So considering she has not even returned to practice yet, I can't imagine it would be, any less than a week or 2 before she returns. But that all just depends on when she's able to return to a full practice.
And you made a really good point earlier that I want to circle back to, and just that you want to make sure that she's not overcompensating and leaning too much on one muscle, or, kind of tweaking her form too. I mean, that's something else to keep in consideration with these types of injuries, is that you're kind of used to just trying to play around the pain and avoiding causing that pain, which can lead you to some bad habits, leave you susceptible to other injuries. So that's just another part to this very complex sort of injury that she's recovering from. And again, and not to beat a dead horse, but it's just the patience thing that the Fever keep talking about. It's just, you got to be patient with it. And I mean, the kid's only in her 2nd year in the league. Like they want this to be a very long and fruitful career. And the only way that happens is if they make sure that they're careful here on the front end and do their due diligence, take their time, make sure that she has adequate time to recover, which is just something that bears repeating, because, fandom being what it is, understandably, that can get a little aggravating sometimes to hear that, but she's a human, she's a person, she's young, the career's early, the Fever are still succeeding. I hate to think what the response would be if they were struggling, but they're playing well despite the injuries, and I think that can't be overlooked either.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the thing with her being in her 2nd year in the league. She also has never been injured before. Like her entire college career, she played I think it was 139 games in her college career, and then played I think it was 42 games, including playoffs, in her rookie year. So she's never had an injury like this before, unless she had something in high school. And if it was in high school, it was 6 years ago. So, they don't really have a precedent for how long it's going to take her to recover from this injury, because also every player is different when it comes to recovering from muscle injuries. So, I think the reason they don't have a timeline is because they don't know a timeline. They don't know how her body's going to react to rehab on any given day. And one day she could be feeling great. One day she could be feeling terrible in terms of her recovery. So I think that's kind of what they're trying to juggle in terms of when is she able to come back, or is there a timeline for her to come back?
Moving on for the Fever, just looking ahead a little bit. I mean, this they obviously have some games in between that, but this is kind of an important and valuable stretch for them. It's their last little break of the season, right? Between games, where they get basically a week off between Connecticut, and then when the Lynx come to town on the 22nd, 17th to the 22nd, they have off. And Stephanie White yesterday kind of talked about how they handle that break and just how they're going to approach that time off.
Rest.
Yeah.
I think just coming off of what we came off of on the West Coast, and number 2, an opportunity now with added player to really go through all of our stuff to make sure that we can really implement all of our things and address some slippage in practice. It was nice to be able to get on the floor to actually practice today and address some of those areas on the defensive end as well. So rest, recovery, and fine tune some things.
There you go, Stephanie White. I'm out of audio, so Chloe, you got to carry us the rest of the way.
That's fine. Well, I mean, I think the 4 days off for the Fever after this stretch going to Sunday or 4 days off of games, at least for the Fever, will be very beneficial for them, because they've played every other day for, a week and a half from that July 30th game against Phoenix at home to going on that 4-game road trip to playing Chicago on Saturday, that was every other day, and a West Coast road trip where they had to fly multiple hours between every stop. And then they had 2 days off between Saturday's game in Dallas, then 2 more days off until they play on Friday, and then they head to Connecticut for a game on Sunday. But I think those 4 days off will be very beneficial just for them to reset. And I'd imagine they'd have 1 or 2 like full days off where they don't have to come into practice. But then those other two or 3 days, however much they decide to have practice, will be pretty beneficial for them to, as Steph White mentioned, get Odyssey Sims up to speed on that. Both get her up to speed on the offense, and if Caitlyn Clark feels ready, that'd be a perfect time to integrate her back into the offense as well with those multiple practice days that they have. So it will be a very good time off for them, especially going into, I think there's a back-to-back against the Minnesota Lynx, home and away, right after those 4 days off. And then they have a bit of a tough stretch to end the season where they play the Lynx again to end the season. And then they have a couple other tough games that I can't specifically remember right now. But yeah, so they have this stretch of some easier games against Dallas, Washington, Connecticut, who are all out of the playoff picture right now. And then they have those 4 days off, and then they kind of have a tougher stretch with 3 games against Minnesota and then some other tough games after that.
It feels almost imperative to go 3-0 over this next little stretch because, like you said, then it's Lynx twice, then Seattle comes to town, then you're out in LA, then you're out at Golden State, and then you're swinging through Arizona again before you finally get the Sky and the Mystics. So I mean, it feels like if they can hold serve at home, go on the road and take care of business, they're going to give themselves a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of grace going in there against a team like LA that they've struggled with, against the Lynx, who are among the best in the league. So it's really important stretch right here. And then, like you said, I mean, that break is going to be so valuable.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty important stretch for them because they're in that, the portion of the standings where everyone's like 1 game apart. There's like 1 game in between 4th, or I'm looking at it right now. There's 3 games in between 4th and 9th necessarily right now. So kind of any kind of faltering could put you tumbling down the standings. We saw it with Seattle. They've lost 5 games in a row, and they went from, I think it was like 4th to 8th in the standings. So they're kind of holding on for dear life right now, and that's something obviously the Fever want to avoid. They're at 5th right now, but they're also tied with Las Vegas. They're 1.5 games behind Phoenix. They're 1.5 games ahead of Golden State. So it's very mushed up in the standings right now, and they want to create as much breathing room as they possibly can. And if they can kind of get into that top 4, that would be ideal for them to have that hosting capacity too for the playoffs potentially.
Anything else, Chloe, you wanted to touch on before we open the gates of hell and dive into the comments?
I don't think so.
All right, hell we go. Let's start with this one. So why didn't they take this long-term approach from the beginning? This is obviously with Caitlyn Clark. They did. I mean, I'm sure that Stephanie White went to bed just reciting long-term focus, taking our time, being careful, patient, etc., because she said it to us in 3 or 4 different ways, at least 100 times, I think, the first time she was dealing with this groin injury.
Yeah, I think.
Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think they also didn't know what the long-termness was. Like, obviously, she was out for, I think it was 2.5 weeks the first time she had that groin strain. That was her first ever groin strain. So that was what they thought at the time with the information they had was the long-term approach of her coming back. And, that's, they were able to reintegrate her back. She felt good. She got extra imaging after that first groin strain that showed it was healed. So they were taking all the steps to make sure she was as healthy as possible. But this is also the first time she's had these injuries, especially these multiple injuries. And I think, they were doing what they thought was long-term at the time. And obviously now with the information they have, would they have held her out longer? Maybe, maybe not. Like, it's all just based on the situation at the time. And right now with this right groin, it seems like the best situation is to take the very slow approach and make sure everything is healthy.
And I think that some people, and I've wondered it too, maybe like the All-Star game, did that push her to come back sooner than she should have? And I think if that was the case, maybe they would have just waited until closer to like maybe right at the All-Star break and be like, okay, we're going to give it a go here, kind of a low-intensity thing, mess around, have some fun, and then we'll go into the season. But I think that it was because she was game ready. At least that's my read on it. I don't know if you feel one way or the other on that and the whole how the All-Star game dynamic fits into that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, what'd you say about the All-Star game?
So when she came back from the first time, because she got hurt right before the All-Star break, right?
Yeah.
Came back. She came back right before then, and I kind of wondered. I've seen it floating around too on social media. Is that why she's rushing herself? Is she rushing herself back because of that? And I kind of pushed back on that a little bit because I think if it was a matter of just because the All-Star game, she wanted to play in that in her hometown or in her home city right now.
Yeah, I don't think she rushed herself back.
Yeah.
Because of the All-Star game either. Like the left groin injury was obviously, I assume it's something she got imaging on as well. It's just they did what they thought was best with the information they had at the time. But then obviously the third major muscle injury with this right groin, they realized, obviously something isn't working. So they need to step back and do the long-term approach. So I think the first 2-week stints of she was out for 5 games with that quad strain, came back, got the left groin strain, out for 5 games, came back. They obviously realized she needed more time or she needed more, kind of more help on how to not overcompensate the injury with other, muscles, which could lead to these next injuries to separate muscles.
Question that we got on Twitter: does the hardship contract roll into the playoff rosters? Or does it need to be a standard contract by season's end?
I'm pretty sure that it can still be a hardship contract, assuming the team still has a hardship need, and the Fever will still have a hardship need going into the playoffs because, obviously Sid Colson and Ari McDonald will be out for the season. But in the case it doesn't extend into the playoffs, then they do technically have the option of waiving Sydney Colson or waiving Ari McDonald. It seems like that's not something they want to do, considering they've gone this hardship route. And obviously, seeing practice yesterday, Sydney and Ari were both with the team and still, hanging out with the team, even with these season-ending injuries. But they could technically waive one or both of them in order to open up those spots on the roster. And they'd obviously wouldn't recoup any money, but they also have $95,000, or it was $95,000 before they signed Odyssey Sims. They have a good amount of cap space to sign someone for the season.
Pausing on that real quickly, what would be the upside to waiving injured players? Like it just seems like it'd be unfair to the players to an extent. I don't know what it would bring to the team, and just seems like it'd just be a bad baseball move.
I guess the upside would be that they open up a roster spot. Because right now with hardship, they can only have up to 11 players on the team. And if they were to waive, one or both of Sydney Colson or Ari McDonald, they could get back up to 12. They obviously couldn't sign players who want more than the prorated league minimum with their cap space. But I guess the upside of it would be that they would be able to get back up to 12 players, and they wouldn't need the hardship waiver. But it seems like they want to go the route of hardship.
I'll let you read this one.
I think the world would have to freeze over before they consider trading Caitlyn Clark. I don't know what making the playoffs has to do with it. They would never trade Caitlyn Clark or Leah Boston unless they.
What do you know, Chloe? One from Ben: feels like these next 3 games are really key against lower teams. Need to maintain in standings, especially when they have 3 games left against Lynx and other playoff teams. Definitely agree there. Let's see. Any others? Chloe, you can see the comment section as well. Let's see. I saw a good one down here. Let me see. This is live television, folks. And I was listening to what Chloe was saying, is missing some of the comments. Here's one. Hey, Chloe, what's the role of Brianna Turner on this team?
I mean, I think it's the same as any other team that has that depth I mean, the one I point to really is Mackenzie Holmes on Seattle Storm, which is something I just pay attention to because she went to IU. But, Mackenzie Holmes doesn't play very much at all. She's there for the depth if there is an injury. And I think that's the same role that Brianna Turner has on the team. Like, very few coaches run 12-player rotations. It's usually 8-9 player rotations, and obviously some players are going to be out of that rotation. I think Nate Tibbetts from Phoenix, he's talked about he's running an 8-player rotation for the rest of the season to get them ready for playoffs, and that means I think it is Lexi Held, Kalani Brown, and one other player. They're basically not playing at all for Phoenix right now, and that's kind of just the same situation Bree Turner is on the team. She's there for depth. She's there, if they need her. Obviously, she played significant minutes against Phoenix on Thursday when they had those 2 season-ending injuries and they were down by, 20 in the fourth quarter because they needed that depth, and that's what she's there for. I know a lot of fans say, she's just there to take up space, but if it wasn't her on the team, it would be someone else on the team who also wasn't playing significant minutes. So either way, whether it was Bree Turner, whether it was, somebody else, they're not going to be playing significant minutes.
Here's another one, Clay, that I'd love for you to chew on and vamp on. The LA road game, the Phoenix road game showed that the current Fever squad is not good enough to challenge for a title. And then in the follow-up, Seagazer says, Fever are too small. They cannot be that small if they want to challenge the title for a title. So what do you think?
I don't know. I think it depends given on any given day. Like, obviously they showed in that 5-game winning streak where they beat Phoenix, they beat Seattle, they beat who else? I can't remember. Dallas. Dallas doesn't really matter that much in beating them, but I think they are able to challenge. They've had that small lineup of, Ari McDonald's 5'6", Sydney Colson's 5'8". They were winning with that lineup. Obviously, Kelsey Mitchell, 5'9", 5'10". They were winning with that lineup, and I think it showed that they can challenge for a title. They play a slightly different style of basketball against a team like, maybe the New York Liberty, who is a bigger team, and the Lynx were a bigger team. But, I think they're able to challenge for a title, and they've, shown that in a way. They've just had a bunch of, setbacks with, all the injuries they've had, the roster shuffling with DeWanna Bonner, that's all kind of set them back in a way. And they're still, 5th in the league right now. I think, 3 games above 500, 4 games above 500, which is first time they've been 4 games above 500 since 2015. So I think they've shown that they can challenge for a title and, be successful even as, a smaller team.
And 2, I think, the Arizona game was coming off, or the Phoenix game was coming off that road trip. Yeah, I feel like scheduling, there's some other factors too, not trying to pack their lunch or anything like that, but I think there are other factors they have to take into consideration with some of these games because the schedule is what it is. You're not always, teams are going to be more worn down in some of those situations like that Phoenix game specifically, and LA, for whatever reason, has just had their number this year, as Chloe's mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
Just a quick confirmation thing. There was strained groin. It was just an irritation. It's a new injury entirely, right?
Yeah, it's a new injury entirely. They never officially confirmed that she strained her groin, but she got imaging directly after. So she injured her groin in Boston on July 15th, and they played a back-to-back against New York. So they're playing on July 16th. And originally, she was listed as questionable at the 1 p.m. injury report. And then she got imaging between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. that showed that she can't play. And then she was downgraded to out. So I would assume that imaging showed there was some kind of strain. It was never officially confirmed, but with her being out this long too, it's something that, they had to work through, and she was shut down for a while. And she's kind of just now getting back into it. So it was never officially confirmed, but, it was a new injury entirely.
Every team the Fever struggle, or every team that has an actual big center the Fever struggles with. Do you agree with that assessment?
I mean, they beat Atlanta. They have the Atlanta has two posts. They have Brittany Griner, Bree Jones, and I believe they hold the tiebreaker over Atlanta 3-1. So I wouldn't say they struggle against teams that have big posts. I'm pretty sure it's 3-1.
2-2.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah, they split the series 2-2.
yeah, but
And
they
right? No, they didn't. I'm sorry. They did 2-2. They've gone every other game. They've split every back-to-back year. So, and that's the other thing too. When you talk to these, you hear from opposing coaches, they always talk about the Fever's physicality. And, they have that brute strength, I guess, a little bit. They can help overcome the lack of size. I mean, Aaliyah Boston seems like she quietly just does her thing, but she's putting up great numbers. She's a physical presence in the post. It's a good job, as we've picked up on sometimes, getting under the opposing post skin, which can be an invaluable asset to have at times, and you're able to do that without getting caught for it and getting in foul trouble. Like they found ways at least to work around it.
Yeah, I think Aaliyah Boston, she's a very physical player, but it's also kind of a quiet physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And she's had 6 straight not triple doubles. She had 6 straight double doubles kind of around that 5-game winning streak that the Fever had. And she's been, one of those quietly very efficient players. She won Eastern Conference Player of the Week. She's been kind of, as Steph White has mentioned too, she's been the hub for the Fever, especially with Caitlyn out. And she's been, that player that they're trying to run the offense through because, she's that much of a consistent force.
Here's a question I'm going to throw you on the spot with. Who's your MVP for this Fever team this year? As things stand now. It's got to be, it's one of two, right?
Who are you saying?
As I was thinking of this, I thought maybe it would come down to probably either Boston or Mitchell.
Yeah, I would think so.
I think they have probably the most compelling case, but now you have to decide. I gave you some time to think because I put you on the spot there. Yeah, please, commenters, get involved as well. I kind of want to do an informal straw poll, see where everybody's at.
I would say, as of right now, Kelsey Mitchell would be the MVP, just because of her versatility that she's been able to show. I think she's leading the WNBA right now in points scored.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's also she's been able to be that versatile player, as we saw on Saturday. She, was an emergency point guard, something she said she hadn't played since college, and she had 8 assists and 26 points on, I think it was 9 of 18 shooting. So she's shown that she can step into new roles kind of on the fly and still just excel. So that's my thoughts for MVP.
The counterpoint to that would be that Aaliyah Boston has been, just that steady presence, just glancing at her game log now. It's double-double after double-double, double-digit scoring, the rebounding. It's just all there pretty much every night. And it's not the flashiest. It kind of gets, sometimes a little overshadowed by what Kelsey Mitchell does, by Lexi Hawley on the night, by, Sophie Cunningham on the occasion, whoever it may be, or Ira McDonald at points throughout the year. But she's just been steady Eddie, the stabilizing force for this group, even as they've dealt with this just insane number of injuries. I think that would be kind of the counter argument, because if you pull away Aaliyah Boston, you lose that post presence.
Yeah,
you lose that stability she brings night in, night out. But you really can't go wrong with either.
Yeah, that's true. Aaliyah Boston does just get a lot of attention in the post too, so she opens up the floor, I would say, especially with Caitlyn being out. I think tonight will be her 11th straight game, and then she's missed around 20 for the season. Aaliyah Boston is able to get that attention and still be effective in the post, and then she's able to open up the players on the outside too.
Ashley says AB plays much better defense as well. It doesn't show up in the stat sheet. They both have had ups and downs. It's a hard one to pick. I agree with a lot of that too. Let's see. Co-MVPs, remember last year with Reese and Caitlyn Clark. For the purpose of that exercise, which is obviously sweeping the nation that I just did, it's about as hacky as it gets. There are no co-MVPs in that exercise. This one was just silly for trying to keep the team together. doesn't really seem like a team that needs somebody to try and keep together. I mean, we saw it after the last game. We've kind of seen it at points throughout this year. This seems like a group that naturally comes together and is together. And they talked about it all preseason too, of just the chemistry that they had, the emphasis that they had on, Stephanie White said, bringing in good people. The players talked about coming together and just hanging out, spending time together going into the season. Nothing, like we said before, nothing galvanized a team quite like trauma, and this team has certainly had plenty of trauma with the injuries. So I don't know. I would push back on that. I think Sophie's one of many, and I think that she would probably say the same thing in terms of keeping this group together.
I agree.
Chloe, anything else? I have a story to get to. You have some stuff to get to as well. Is there anything else that you want to get to, touch on, just throw out there? I mean, this is your chance to light the internet on fire.
I don't think so. Brian will be taking over Fever coverage this week after tonight's game. I will be off for my sister's wedding from Wednesday to Monday. So he'll be covering the Washington Mystics game, and then he'll take the nice adventurous trek to Connecticut to cover that game at Mohegan Sun. So, look over to him for coverage after tonight and for the rest of the week.
Yep, that'll be fun. Mazel to Chloe's sister on her nuptials. Thank you all so much for watching. I don't think we'll do a show tonight, but I will have a story on Grace Berg coming up soon. Chloe obviously have full game coverage, and like she said, I'll step in and fill in for her while she takes some well-deserved time off to celebrate her sister. And then next week we'll be back at it, hoping to have some surprises for folks. We'll have another live show probably around this time next week on Tuesday, time TBD, maybe Wednesday, but somewhere. We kind of like this early week slot. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We looked at the numbers children a little bit earlier today, and they've exceeded any and all expectations and really raised the bar. So you guys are awesome. Chloe, you're fine. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.